Here I am above Norwich Market looking down over the colourful stalls of 2025 towards Davey Place, and will now travel back firstly to 1978 and now, amazingly, back 171 years to 1854 when the same view of Davey Place looked like this. At this point, Davey Place was only 42 years old, having been created in 1812 by Alderman Jonathan Davey of Eaton Hall, as stated on this plaque, which I think has disappeared. Just going on a slight tangent, when I make these videos I tend to research the information and historic photos first and then go out to take current equivalent photos. Unfortunately, when I came to do this one, as we shall see, Davey Place had a lot of scaffolding covering buildings. Oh well, this is the entrance to Davey Place from Gentleman's Walk. Back in 1812, Jonathan Davey announced he would blow a hole in the King's Head, causing much consternation and his house being put under guard. But he was joking. He was talking about the King's Head coaching inn on the marketplace, which needed to be removed in order to create an access to what would become the first purpose-built pedestrian street in the city. Now looking into Davey Place from the point where the King's Head stood looks like this. Compared with this view from 1969. We'll go into Davey Place as far as the steps at the end and then return looking in the opposite direction. On the left hand side, this is the current view, and in 1965 we would have seen Ashworth and Pike Cafe and Restaurant and Stead and Simpson Shoes. This is the current view from a little way in, which in 1900 looked like this. Shrub Souls, with its sign high up on the right hand side, was a photographer with a number of studios across the city. The Davey Place studio was open from 9 in the morning until 9 at night and claimed royal patronage. A little further along currently looks like this. I did warn you about the scaffolding, and in this picture from 1922, number 10 Davey Place was occupied by Bonzers, a grocer's. Bonzers had this eagle and pearl sign above the shop, which was handed over to the Castle Museum when they closed in 1938. These premises would later be occupied by Goosers, which had previously been in the Haymarket, and Senate's, with their occupation concluding around 1961 when this photo was taken. Heading up to the junction with Castle Street now looks like this. I can remember Dixon's being on this opposite corner, but in 1959 it was H. Tice and Sons, an iron and steel merchant, a business which had dated back to 1750. It can be seen on the left of this older photo, taken from a slightly different angle, and now we'll head up to the steps at the end, which as we can see are very well worn, and turn around for the return journey. I mentioned Goosers earlier, and by the time of this photo it had relocated to this spot and, as I well remember, was selling records, though I remember them being on the ground floor rather than the basement, which suggests to me this photo is probably from the 1960s. From this location we can also see Brahms selling furs and fashions. Descending the steps and heading back towards Castle Street now looks like this, and in the 1960s this was the equivalent view. Remember the King's Head that Jonathan Davey put a hole through? When that was demolished it was relocated here, eventually closing in 1981, and its most recent occupant was the Body Shop, which is also now closed. Turning right into Castle Street and looking back to the Davey Place corner now looks like this, but in the 1890s this was the view. If we move closer towards Scoyle's, a clothing shop, we can see what appears to be a sheep above the shop entrance. This is a closer view and it's described as a Golden Fleece Ram shop sign made of gilded wood. This site would become the city's main post office and is seen here in the 1970s together with a 2025 equivalent view. Looking from Davey Place towards the market and City Hall looked like this in 1970. You can see all the business signs at this end of Davey Place. Eastern Electricity and Adams on the left, Stead and Simpson and Panks on the right. On the left looks like this in 2025, with this 1961 equivalent including Adcock's Tobacconist. And finally on the right hand side, just before Lloyd's Bank, is Rainbow Whole Foods, which at the time of this 1976 photo was Panks TV Rental and Store. One other claim to fame for Jonathan Davey: he put up the money for the creation of the first Foundry Bridge near the railway station in 1810, this painting by Robert Ladbroke in the 1820s showing that bridge.